when you say they would prove you wrong, are you in the camp of those who don't believe we should have dropped the bombs on Saturday?
Yeah, and just because I think the risk, and I don't think this with any 100% certainty. I think anybody who said that they knew for sure what would happen if Donald Trump struck the Iranian sites was wrong. I mean, there was no way to know for certain what would happen. I thought the probability was unacceptably high that this would pull us into just inevitably onto the slippery slope of escalation. So I would be surprised if Iran's response is exactly what the New York Times is reporting now, but I wouldn't be shocked because, to your point, their leverage has been significantly damaged. The thing that still gives me an enormous amount of concern is just what you laid out, their intention for what Iran should be as they see it on the world stage because of Islamism and extreme Islamism, like all of that gives me really, really serious pause about whether, even if we see a kind of carefully choreographed response where they're telegraphing that they're about to do it and they give this advance notice and there are no deaths and no casualties, if we see that, I still am really nervous that something's going to happen here in the United States. I'm still really nervous that there's going to be more provocations going forward because I just have a hard time believing that they're willing to, just completely capitulate. At the same time, your point is really compelling about their lack of leverage and the amount of leverage that they've lost in negotiations, which, by the way, were ongoing in the last few months with the Trump administration. So I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm still pretty worried about escalation, though this is a good sign.
Let me ask you this, because I'm curious about this. I spent the week off, as you know, but I listened to everybody. I was listening to my neocon friends over at Commentary. I listened to all of Tucker's podcasts, which are 100% the other way. Listen to Bannon, all of it. And so I find the difference in opinion very compelling, very interesting, very sincere. I have almost no tolerance for the people who, look at Tucker and just say he's an anti-Semite. That's such bullshit. He doesn't want another Middle East war. It doesn't make him an anti-Semite. It's ridiculous. There are a lot of people with a very good faith belief that this is the wrong move for us, and that's okay. This nonsense from AOC that he should be impeached is just absurd. Absurd. There's no, okay, get back to me when you've read the Constitution or get a law degree, because you sound like an absolute fucking idiot. There is absolutely no ground to impeach the president. He 100% was within his constitutional authority and his congressionally authorized authority to do what he did on Saturday. Okay, but as for whether it's a good idea, that's a debate we should be having. And look, if we could get congressional approval of the specific action, fine, I'm okay with that too. If you want to bring it to Congress, go ahead and see how that goes. I don't think it's necessary, but go for it if you want to. In any event, I am curious as to what you think he should have done. Let's say he was in a position where Bibi comes to him and says, they are accelerating. I know I've said this 10,000 times for the past 25 years. I know I've said, but I'm telling you this time it's real. And he has reason to believe Netanyahu because of the compromised state Iran is in, having seen all of its proxies get beheaded over the past year. Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis more recently, it's not doing well. And its scariest arms have really been hurt as a result of their attack on Israel and Israel's response and what we did to the Houthis and the war, the naval battle that we saw just, a couple months ago. So let's say Iran was in a panic and that data was real, it's accelerating, and we actually do believe. And you totally believe that they will use a nuke against Israel and possibly against the United States, although that's guaranteed self-destruction. But he, Barack Obama, Bill Clinton, George W. Bush have all said that Iran cannot get a nuclear weapon. They can't. It's just this president, forgive me, but he had the balls to actually do something about it. I said to my friend in texting the other day, I'm like, the wrong administration officials got the nickname Big Balls. It's Trump. This required massive balls. It's just, the guy's got a very steely spine and zero F's to give. He can't be pushed around. He can't be scared. He had a near-death experience that changed his view, I think, of his own consequential life and in our place in the world. Anyway, for all those reasons, Trump did what nobody else would do. So what would you have done if they, what should he have let them do? Just if he believed that intel? Just let him get it?
I think your hypothetical about the intel is what's most difficult for me, because if you are just a civilian and you have to rely on the reporting and the fog of war strategic leaks about what the intel is. So, for example, my colleague Sagar has reported that we don't have any American intel. We have Israeli intel that Americans are relying on because Mossad has a impressive operation in Iran. No
that
doubt
seems
about
clear.
It. Right. And that's really, again, difficult for a civilian to sit back and say,
because we've been told for 25 years they're going to have the bomb within a year, 6 months, weeks. We ran that, but it's out of Bibi. So it has a boy who cried wolf feel to it. And you're talking about American lives potentially.
Yeah. And, I was rereading some of the reporting from like Judith Miller and others back in 2003 about, the lead up to the Iraq war the other day. And again, I get it's not apples to apples, but when you're reading it, you just realize how eerily similar the pattern of selective leaking is. There are some people who do, I think for, unfortunate reasons, it's not that they're bad people, but that they prefer military action, who are strategically leaking things in a way that would push us down the slippery slope. And
I accept all that, and I don't disagree. But let me ask you about like the IAEA report about 60% enrichment, and even Tulsi's testimony. Tulsi's very dovish testimony that there is zero reason why they'd be enriching this much if it were purely for domestic energy purposes, right? I mean, like no one seems to be disputing that 60% enrichment thing. There's zero reason for them to do that unless they're making a nuke. And in fact, the reports are they probably already have enough for 9 or 10 of them at least. So what about that? Because do you think that's made up too by the warmongery military industrial complex crew? They got the IAEA to say that?
That's what's so hard for me. I mean, I genuinely don't know. And I'm not an expert on nuclear proliferation, but from the outside, whether or not they're able to go quickly from A to Z is a hugely important question. If like where they are right now puts them in a place, we're just in a matter of, and this is critical because even Tulsi Gabbard said this, the quote was weeks or months. Okay, but months could be, 15 months. It
doesn't have to be. But I'll give you the floor back. But it doesn't have to be imminent. I think what Trump is thinking is they're weak. They're the weakest now they've been in decades. All of their favorite arms have been cut off or severely hobbled. So there's no better time. They can do the least damage to our troops at these outposts and God forbid domestically now than they've ever been able to do, at least in the past 46 years. They've been killing Americans throughout that entire time. Indisputable. They've been killing hundreds of American Marines, American Air Force, American personnel at base after base throughout those 46 years, including in Iraq and Afghanistan. Okay, so now you've got your chance. That's what's different. To me, the reason we have a president willing to accept that Israeli intel, and again, maybe it's real because Iran's in a different position right now. It's possible they really did say, holy shit, pedal to the metal, we need this. But even if they didn't, I think the difference is we have a president who looked at the scenario and said, now is the time. I've got to be honest, like there's never been a better time. And I know what everyone else has always known, which is, of course, they are building toward one.
And here's the other thing that we haven't talked about yet that gives me a little bit of pause. And again, I'm happy to be proven wrong, but I do think also there was a sudden, and JD Vance was posting about this last week, there was a sudden shift from Israel and then from the United States that I am very curious about because there were diplomatic options being explored by Steve Witkoff, who I think has done a really brave thing over the last several months, last 6 months since Donald Trump was inaugurated and opened up some important conversations. So I'm curious if the diplomatic options were actually exhausted. And again, I get obviously all of the challenges of having negotiations with Iran, but the sudden change, to me, I'm without getting back into the intel conversation, I'm genuinely curious if that was based on intelligence that had changed very suddenly, or if because Israel moved to the strikes, we ended up not having diplomatic options that we could continue pursuing. And then the diplomatic options are now off the table in a way where they could still be explored if in this situation. I mean, that to me is a huge question about going back to what Donald Trump should have done. Could Donald Trump have said to Netanyahu, we are close to having a deal that is better than risking escalation with Iran? I'm curious about that. I don't know. Again, it's hard from the outside, but I'm genuinely very curious.
It sounds like what we're hearing from the reports is that our intel went to Trump and said, it's done. Bibi's going to do it, and including Ratcliffe at CIA said the ship has sailed. He's doing it with or without us, and Trump accepted that as a reality. And Israel's obviously in a very difficult position right now. It's been attacked brutally, and it's at war with everybody. And I realize that's a lot of American detractors over here of President Trump's decisions feel like we're being led around by Israel. We're fighting wars that aren't ours, and I am open-minded to that too. I mean, I understand it's like we got our own problems. Like we can't be fighting Israel's problems, but it is an American problem if Iran gets a nuclear weapon. I think that is potentially problematic. I don't think it's the same as like, well, Israel has one. Well, I mean, they're not radical Islamist jihadis. Do you not understand the difference? Like, go do 2 minutes of research on what radical Islamic jihadis want to do to the United States or any America. And I have zero tolerance for the people who say it has nothing to do with our values. It's the fact that we've been too bellicose and too warmongery in the Middle East. Bullshit. Do your homework about radical Islam. They want to kill all of us. All of us. They'd like every single, it is not just a fucking chant, death to America. They actually want it to happen. They've been working to kill American troops for the better part of 5 decades now, and it's not going to change. They've made really clear what they want and how they feel about us. So they cannot have a nuclear bomb. They cannot. We are days away from what has been dubbed by some the Rio Reset, what some worry could be a threat to the US dollar's global dominance in over 80 years. On July 6th, BRICS nations, that's Russia, China, India, and Iran, and some more, are expected to unveil their plans to circumvent the US dollar, thus cratering, its value. Some report that they've already been laying the groundwork as their central banks have been methodically divesting from the US dollar and US bonds in favor of gold. How can you protect your IRA or 401k from the fallout from this landmark shift? One option is to diversify with gold from Birch Gold Group. Historically, gold has been a safe haven in times of high uncertainty, which is right now. Get a free info kit on tax-sheltered gold IRAs by texting the word MK letters to 989898. July 6th could mark a monumental shift happening among nations that control 1/3 of the world's GDP. Arm yourself with information to diversify your retirement savings. Text MK to 989898 and claim your free info kit from Birch Gold. Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.